Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was a legendary Super Saiyan. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The diagnosis came on a Tuesday, under the humming fluorescent lights of a sterile doctor's office in Muzudafu. The air smelled of antiseptic and ozone, a scent that 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya would eventually come to associate with the destruction of his own dreams. Dr. Tsubasa sat behind his desk, his thick goggles reflecting the trembling form of Inko Midoriya and her small, green-haired son. The doctor held up an X-ray, tapping it with a pen. The tapping sound echoed in the silence, loud and rhythmic, like a countdown. "It is peculiar," Dr. Tsubasa said, his voice devoid of the usual bedside manner reserved for crushing a child's spirit. He wasn't looking at Izuku's foot. He was looking at the boy's chest cavity. "Peculiar?" Inko asked, her hands twisting her skirt. "You mean, he has a quirk? Or he doesn't?" "Oh, he has something, Mrs. Midoriya," the doctor muttered, leaning forward. "Usually, we look for the absence of a toe joint to indicate the next stage of evolution. Izuku has the joint, which would typically mean he is quirkless. However, he slid a second image onto the backlight. It showed the boy's nervous system. It was lit up like a Christmas tree, dense and winding, far more complex than a standard human's. "His body is producing energy," Tsubasa explained, a frown creasing his forehead. "A massive amount of it. It's not a stockpile like an emitter, and it's not altering his shape like a mutant type. It's just there. Sitting in his cells? Dormant." Izuku's eyes, wide and shimmering with unshed tears, looked up. "So, I can be a hero? Like All Might?" The doctor looked down at the boy. For a second, a flicker of genuine unease passed through the man's eyes. He had seen thousands of children, thousands of quirks. But looking at this small boy, the doctor's instincts, primal and buried deep, screamed danger. "The energy has no outlet, Izuku," Tsubasa said coldly. "Think of a nuclear reactor with no power lines attached to it. If you try to force it, you won't produce a spark. You'll just overheat. My advice? Give up. Whatever this is, it's not meant to be used by a human. Give up." The words were a heavy stone dropped into the ocean of Izuku's mind. They created ripples that would last for 10 years. Inko cried on the way home. She apologized over and over, hugging him, her tears soaking his shirt. But Izuku didn't cry. He just felt hot. A low, simmering heat in the pit of his stomach. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was just a presence. A sleeping dragon curled around his heart, waiting for a reason to wake up. 10 years later, Aldera Junior High was a place where dreams went to die, usually at the hands of Katsuki Bakugo. The classroom was stiflingly hot, the air conditioner having broken down 3 days prior. The heat made everyone irritable, but for Izuku Midoriya, the heat was internal. It was always there, a low-grade fever that never broke. "Since you're all third years, it's time to think seriously about your future," the teacher announced, throwing a stack of papers into the air. "But I know you all want to go to the hero course." The class erupted into a cacophony of cheers and quirk displays. Eyes stretched, fingers turned to stone, minor telekinesis rattled desks. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks," the teacher droned. "But use them outside, not in here." "Hey, teach!" A voice cut through the noise like a jagged knife. Katsuki Bakugo leaned back in his chair, feet on his desk, an arrogant smirk plastered on his face. "Don't lump me in with these losers. I'm the real deal. But I guess you guys are lucky to end up as sidekicks to some D-lister." The class roared in indignation, but Bakugo ignored them, his red eyes sliding toward the back of the room. Toward the boy who was shrinking into his shaking shoulders. "Oh, that's right," the teacher said, checking his clipboard, oblivious to the predator-prey dynamic shifting the room's atmosphere. "Midoriya, didn't you want to go to UA too?" The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't the silence of confusion. It was the silence of a vacuum before an explosion. Then, the laughter hit. "DKU? No way! You can't get into the hero course just by studying. He's practically quirkless." "The dormant kid!" Izuku stood up, his face burning. "There's no rule against it. Just because I haven't manifested it yet doesn't mean. Boom. Bakugo was there in an instant, his palms slamming onto Izuku's desk with enough force to scorch the wood. Smoke curled up, smelling of caramelized sugar and nitroglycerin. Izuku fell back, scrambling out of his chair, hitting the floor hard. Listen to me, you damn nerd! Bakugo loomed over him, small explosions popping in his palms. You're worse than the rest of these rejects. You're nothing. You have this weird, freaky diagnosis, but you can't do anything. You're just a pebble in my path. Izuku looked up. His heart was hammering against his ribs. Thump. 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 It was loud. Too loud. He wondered if Bakugo could hear it. Kaken, I'm not trying to compete with you, Izuku stammered, holding his hands up. His skin felt tight. I've wanted this since I was little. You want to die in the entrance exam? Bakugo sneered. Smoke drifted from his hands. Defenseless Izuku. The school's punching bag. Just stay out of my way. The rest of the day was a blur of ridicule. By the time the final bell rang, Izuku felt physically ill. The heat inside him was spiking. It usually happened when he was stressed. He felt a phantom pressure behind his eyes, a headache that wasn't quite pain, but fullness. He was packing his bag when the notebook was snatched from his hands. Hero analysis for the future, number 13. We're not done yet, Deku, Bakugo said. He held the notebook between his palms. With a sharp crack, he detonated an explosion, charring the book instantly. He then tossed it casually out the open window. Izuku watched it fall, paralyzed. You know, Bakugo said, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper as he walked toward the door with his lackeys. If you really want to be a hero that badly, there might be another way. He paused at the threshold, looking back over his shoulder. The afternoon sun cast his shadow long and dark over Izuku. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray you'll be born with a useful quirk in the next life. The words hung in the air, toxic and heavy. Izuku stood trembling in the empty classroom. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. He wanted to scream. He wanted to run at Bakugo and, do what? Hit him. The thought was sudden and violent. It wasn't Izuku's voice. It was deeper, guttural. Crush him. Izuku gasped, clutching his chest. The room felt like it was spinning. The heat flared, scorching his insides. For a fleeting second, the desks around him rattled. A pen sitting on a nearby table fractured down the middle with a sharp snap. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut, breathing in through his nose, out through his mouth. Calm down. Calm down. Mom says deep breaths. Don't let the heat win. It took a full minute for the sensation to pass. When he opened his eyes, he was sweaty and exhausted, as if he'd run a marathon. He looked at the broken pen on the desk next to him. Must have been cheap plastic, he whispered to himself, his voice shaking. He retrieved his burnt notebook from the koi pond, the fish nibbling at the charred paper. Stupid Kaken, he muttered, trying to wipe the water off. If I really jumped, that would be inciting suicide. Think before you speak. He walked home, taking the long route. He needed to avoid people. He needed to cool down. The tunnel under the underpass was dark and quiet. Perfect for brooding. He was muttering to himself, trying to salvage his mood by mimicking All Might's laugh, when the sewer grate rattled. He didn't hear the villain emerge. He felt the shift in air pressure. The sludge rose like a tidal wave, a grotesque mass of fluid and malice, a medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain hissed, his voice wet and gurgling. Before Izuku could turn, the sludge slammed into him. It forced its way into his mouth, his nose. It was suffocating, cold, and vile. Don't struggle, kid. It'll only hurt for a minute. Thanks for the help. You're a hero to me. Izuku clawed at the fluid. He couldn't breathe. His vision began to spot with black dots. I'm dying, he realized with a jolt of pure terror. I'm going to die here, in a sewer, without ever doing anything. Panic set in. But with the panic came the heat. It wasn't a slow burn this time. It was a volcanic eruption. His heart rate skyrocketed. The villain paused, confused. What the? The sludge villain muttered. Why are you getting so hot? The slime touching Izuku's skin began to hiss. Steam rose from the boy's body. Izuku's eyes, wide with fear, suddenly flashed a bright, luminous yellow before fading back to green. Get off! Izuku threw his arm out. He didn't have leverage. He didn't have air. But his body reacted on instinct. A shockwave, small, but dense, rippled off his skin. The slime villain was momentarily pushed back, the fluid bubbling as if boiled. What is this, kid? Before the villain could retighten his grip, the manhole cover flew into the air. Have no fear! The booming voice filled the tunnel. A massive figure stomped onto the pavement, striking a pose that radiated safety. For I am here, All Might. The symbol of peace didn't waste time. He pulled back a fist, creating a wind tunnel just by motioning. Texas. Smash! The wind pressure alone obliterated the slime villain's hold. The sludge scattered, splattering against the concrete walls. Izuku was blown back, tumbling across the pavement, gasping for air. He lay there coughing, his throat burning. He looked up to see the towering figure of his idol collecting the villain into plastic bottles. All Might. Izuku wheezed. Apologies, young man. All Might laughed, though he looked slightly hurried. I got a bit turned around in the sewer system. But you are safe now. Izuku scrambled up. He needed to ask. He needed to know. Wait. Please. All Might was already crouching to jump. I cannot stay. Evil never rests, and neither do I. Wait. Izuku grabbed onto All Might's leg just as the hero launched himself into the sky. The rooftop conversation was a blur of wind and revelation. Seeing All Might deflate into a skeletal, emaciated man was a shock, but it didn't deter Izuku. He listened to the story of the injury, the respiratory system destroyed, the limit on his time. But then came the question. The question that defined Izuku's existence. I have a dormant energy, Izuku said, staring at his feet. The doctors say I can't use it. I'm basically quirkless. They say I'm a liability. Can I still be a hero like you? All Might looked at the boy. He saw the desperation. But he also remembered the sensation in the tunnel. When he had arrived, the air around the boy had been vibrating. It felt unstable. Dangerous. Being a hero wasn't just about spirit. It was about saving people. And if this boy had a power that was dormant and potentially volatile, pro-heroes are always risking their lives, All Might said gently but firmly. Some villains just can't be beaten without powers. And if your power is unusable, then I cannot simply say yes. You could hurt yourself, or worse, get in the way of someone else being saved. Izuku felt the world gray out. If you want to help people, All Might continued, walking toward the door to the stairwell, there's always the police force. They get a lot of flack because the heroes capture the villains, but it's a fine profession. The door clicked shut. Izuku was alone on the roof. The wind howled, cold and biting. Give up. The doctor's voice joined All Might's. Izuku walked to the railing. He looked down at the city. It was so far down. Bakugo's words echoed in his mind. Take a swan dive. No, Izuku whispered, stepping back. He wiped his eyes. I'm not doing that. I'm going to go home. But the heat didn't leave. It sat in his chest, heavier than before. It wasn't just heat anymore. It was pressure. Like a balloon inflated to the point of bursting, Izuku walked aimlessly. He didn't want to go home and face his mother. He didn't want to see the pity in her eyes. He found himself in the Tatooine shopping district. He didn't register the smoke at first. Then he heard the screams. He looked up. A massive fire was raging between the buildings. Explosions rocked the street. The crowd was pushing back, terrified. Izuku pushed forward. It was instinct. He needed to see. Through the gaps in the crowd and the wall of heroes who were standing around doing nothing, he saw it. The slime villain. He had escaped. It's my fault, Izuku whispered, horror gripping him. All Might dropped him because of me. The heroes were useless. Empty Lady couldn't fit. Kamui Woods was vulnerable to fire. Death Arms couldn't get a grip on the fluid. Where is All Might? Someone in the crowd yelled. He's not coming, Izuku thought. He's out of time. Then, through the roaring flames and the shifting sludge, Izuku saw a pair of eyes. Red eyes, wide with terror and rage. Bakugo, the villain, had him. He was suffocating him, using his explosions to fuel the fires around them. Bakugo was thrashing, but his movements were getting weaker. The sludge was filling his nose, his mouth. Izuku's eyes locked with Bakugo's. For the first time in their lives, Bakugo wasn't looking at him with superiority. He was looking at him with a silent plea. Help me. The snap was audible only to Izuku. It sounded like a guitar string breaking inside his brain. Reason evaporated. Fear evaporated. There was only the heat. Izuku didn't think. His legs moved on their own. He broke through the police barrier. Hey! Stop! You'll get killed! Death Arms shouted, reaching for him. Izuku was fast. Surprisingly fast. He sprinted toward the villain, his school shoes slapping against the pavement. You again? The slime villain roared, looming over Bakugo. I'll kill you this time, you pest! Izuku threw his backpack. It hit the villain in the eye. The fluid recoiled. Izuku clawed at the slime. Kaken, why are you here? Bakugo gagged, trying to breathe. My legs, they just moved. Izuku yelled, his voice cracking. Tears streamed down his face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were evaporating on his cheeks. The villain recovered. You little gnat! A massive tendril of sludge, hard as concrete, swung at Izuku. It slammed into his side. Normally, this would break ribs. Normally, this would send a middle schooler flying. Izuku didn't fly. He slid back a few inches, his feet digging into the asphalt. He looked down at his torso. He felt the impact, but it didn't hurt. Why didn't it hurt? Die! The villain shrieked, bringing down a second tendril. Wham! Izuku raised his arm. He blocked the strike. The concrete beneath him cracked into a spiderweb. The crowd went silent. The heroes stared. A quirkless boy had just tanked a hit that destroyed a building earlier. Let him go, Izuku growled. The voice startled everyone. It wasn't the high-pitched squeak of a teenager. It was a low, vibrating rumble that seemed to come from the ground itself. What? The villain hesitated. Izuku looked up. The change began in the eyes. The emerald-green irises flooded with gold. The pupils constricted until they were pinpricks, then vanished entirely. A vein bulged on Izuku's forehead. His heart beat once, T-H-O-M, so loud that Bakugo felt it against his own back. I said. Izuku's teeth grit together. His body began to tremble violently. Let him go! KRRZZZT. Green lightning arced off Izuku's skin. It wasn't the one for all lightning. This was wild, jagged, and thick. It struck the ground, sending chunks of debris flying. What is this kid doing? Kamui Wood shielded his eyes. The heat, it's unbearable. The air around Izuku began to warp. A green aura, thick and viscous like flame, erupted from his body. It shot into the sky, parting the smoke from the fires. The pressure was immense. Windows in the surrounding shops shattered instantly. Grah! Izuku threw his head back and screamed. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated release. 10 years of suppression. 10 years of being told he was broken. 10 years of holding back a nuclear reactor. His school uniform tore at the shoulders. His muscles, previously lean and unassuming, suddenly swelled, tightening with dense, impossible power. His hair stood up, spiking wildly, glowing with a greenish-yellow hue. The slime villain recoiled, terrified by the sheer energy emanating from the boy. Get back! Stay back! The villain lashed out with everything he had, a barrage of sludge tendrils aimed to crush Izuku. Izuku didn't dodge. He didn't block. He just walked through it. The attacks hit his aura and dissolved. The sludge evaporated on contact with the green energy shield. Izuku reached the villain. He grabbed the sludge holding Bakugo. His grip was iron. You're in my way! Izuku roared. He ripped. With a sound like tearing canvas, Izuku tore the sludge apart. He didn't just pull Bakugo free. He yanked him out with such force that Bakugo flew backward, landing in the arms of a stunned empty lady. Now, it was just Izuku and the villain. You monster! The slime villain shrieked, trying to reform, trying to flee. Izuku stood in the center of the crater he had created. He wasn't breathing, he was panting, animalistic breaths. His blank, white eyes locked onto the villain. He raised his right hand. A small, green sphere of energy formed in his palm. It was the size of a baseball, but the light it emitted was blinding. It swirled with chaos. Get away! The villain whimpered. Izuku didn't speak. He just thrust his hand forward. The sphere didn't travel. It expanded. Roar! A beam of green energy, massive and devastating, erupted from his hand. It was wider than the street. No! He'll kill us all! Death Arm screamed, diving for cover. At the last fraction of a second, some tiny, remaining fragment of Izuku's consciousness kicked in. He jerked his hand upward. The beam missed the buildings. It missed the crowd. It caught the upper half of the slime villain and carried him, vaporizing him instant by instant, up into the atmosphere. The beam punched a hole through the clouds. It kept going, a pillar of green light visible for miles, piercing the twilight sky. The shockwave shattered every remaining window in a 3-block radius. The fires were snuffed out instantly by the vacuum pressure. Silence fell over the district. The beam faded. In the center of the devastation, Izuku Midoriya stood. His shirt was incinerated, leaving him bare-chested. His pants were tattered. Steam rolled off his body in thick waves. His hair, still spiked and glowing, slowly began to fall back down. The green aura flickered and died. He swayed. His eyes rolled back into his head. The gold faded, returning to green, then closing. He collapsed face first into the concrete. Izuku. Bakugo whispered, staring from where he sat on the ground. He was trembling. He had never felt fear like that in his life. Not from the villain. From Deku. The heroes slowly stood up, dusting off debris. They looked at the unconscious boy with a mixture of awe and absolute terror. Is he dead? Someone asked. No, a deep voice answered. All Might stepped out from behind a corner. He had arrived just in time to see the blast. He hadn't interfered because he couldn't. The energy density of that beam. If he had jumped in front of it in his weakened state, he wasn't sure he would have survived. He walked over to Izuku's body. The asphalt around the boy was molten, glowing red. The air smelled of ozone and sulfur. All Might knelt down. He touched the boy's shoulder. It was burning hot to the touch. Young Midoriya, All Might whispered. He looked at the boy's back. The muscles were twitching, spasming from the output. This wasn't a quirk. This was a force of nature stuffed into the skin of a teenager. What is he? Kamui Woods asked, stepping closer, wary. Villain? Vigilante? He's a child, All Might said, his voice hard. He scooped Izuku up into his arms. The boy felt heavy, denser than he looked. He saved his classmate when none of us could. All Might looked at the unconscious boy's face. It was peaceful now, but All Might remembered the look in those white eyes. The lack of humanity. The doctor said it was dormant energy. All Might thought, a cold sweat breaking out on his back. It's not dormant anymore. The symbol of peace looked up at the sky, where the clouds were still parted in a perfect circle, revealing the stars. He didn't just punch the villain, All Might murmured to himself. He nearly broke the world. Yue High School, principal's office. 2 days later, Nizu, the principal of Yue, sat behind his desk, pouring tea. Opposite him sat a deflated All Might, in his skeletal form, and a very tired Eraserhead. On the screen, footage from a traffic camera played on a loop. It showed the green beam piercing the sky. The media is calling him the Green Flash, Nizu said cheerfully. Though the destruction reports are less cheerful. The city wants to bill his mother for the road repairs. The kid has no control, Aizawa said, his eyes bloodshot. I visited him in the hospital. He's sedated. His body temperature is sitting at 102 degrees constantly. If he wakes up and gets emotional, he could level the hospital. He saved the Bakugo boy, All Might argued, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. He moved when the pros stood still. He almost vaporized the city block, All Might, Aizawa countered. That wasn't heroism. That was a biological weapon going off. Precisely why we cannot leave him alone, Nizu interjected. He took a sip of tea. The quirk registry has updated his file. They've named the quirk legendary. A bit dramatic, but fitting given the power output. Niza tapped the desk. If we leave him to the regular school system, he will be ostracized. He will be feared. And fear breeds villains. If a power like that falls into the hands of All for One, it is game over. All Might flinched at the name, so Niza smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. We take him in. We train him. Not to be the strongest. He is already dangerously close to that. We train him to be human. He wants to be a hero, All Might said softly. He told me. It's all he's ever wanted. Aizawa sighed, rubbing his temples. Great. A hero who goes berserk if he gets too angry. I'm going to need more eye drops. It is decided then, Niza said. Izuku Midoriya will take the entrance exam. But we will be watching closely. Mizudafu General Hospital. Izuku opened his eyes. The room was white. Beeping machines surrounded him. He felt heavy. His limbs felt like they were made of lead. Izuku? He turned his head. His mother was sitting there, asleep in a chair, looking exhausted. He tried to sit up, but a restraint held his chest down. Careful. Izuku froze. He looked to the corner of the room. All Might stood there. Not the buff hero, but the skinny man. He was leaning against the wall, watching Izuku with an unreadable expression. All Might. Izuku rasped. His throat felt dry. You caused quite a scene, young Midoriya, All Might said. Did I? Is Kaken okay? He is fine. Shaken up, but alive. The villain is, well, scattered in the upper atmosphere, but the police are counting it as a capture. Izuku relaxed, his head hitting the pillow. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I got so angry. And then the heat. I know. All Might walked closer. I felt it. He placed a hand on the bed rail. I told you that you couldn't be a hero without a quirk, All Might said. I was wrong. You have a power. A great and terrible power. Izuku looked at his hands. They were bandaged. He could still feel the hum under his skin. The dragon was awake now. It wasn't sleeping anymore. It was pacing. I can't control it, Izuku whispered. I could have killed everyone. Yes, All Might agreed bluntly. You could have. That is why I am here. All Might offered a hand. Yue Hai is the place for those who wish to master their quirks. If you stay out here, you are a danger to society. If you come with us, we can teach you how to put a leash on that monster inside you. Izuku looked at All Might's hand. Monster. Is that what he was now? He thought of Bakugo's face. The fear. He thought of the green light. The power. But he also remembered the feeling of tearing the sludge apart. The feeling of saving him. Izuku reached out. His hand was trembling. He grasped All Might's bony fingers. I want to be a hero, Izuku said, tears forming in his eyes. Please, teach me how not to break the world. All Might squeezed his hand. We will try, my boy. We will try. Outside the window, the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the city. But deep in space, far beyond the moon, a scouter on a passing ship beeped. Once. Twice. A high power level had been detected on Earth, and the universe was listening. The first thing Izuku Midoriya noticed upon waking was not pain, but the absence of it. For a boy who had just channeled enough energy to pierce the cloud layer and vaporize a villain made of sludge, he expected his body to be broken. He expected the familiar ache of torn ligaments, or the sharp sting of burns. But as consciousness slowly poured back into him, filling the vessel of his mind like water into a pitcher, he felt fine. Actually, that was a lie. He didn't feel fine. He felt full. It was a sensation akin to eating a Thanksgiving feast and then being told to run a marathon. His skin felt too tight for his muscles. His veins hummed with a low-frequency vibration that he could hear in his inner ear, a constant, dull thrum-thrum-thrum like an idling engine of a heavy truck. He opened his eyes. The hospital ceiling was a sterile, offensive white. He's awake. The voice was hushed, but to Izuku's heightened senses, it sounded like a shout. He flinched, the motion causing the bed frame to creak ominously. He turned his head. His mother, Inko, was there. Her eyes were red and puffy, clutching a handkerchief as if it were a lifeline. Standing next to her was a doctor he didn't recognize, a tall, severe-looking woman with a mutation quirk that gave her skin a slate-gray, stone-like texture, and in the corner, shrouded in a trench coat that hung loosely on his skeletal frame, was All Might. Izuku! Inko sobbed, rushing forward. She stopped just short of the bed, her hands hovering as if she were afraid to touch him. Mom? Izuku's voice was raspy. He tried to sit up. Crunch. The metal safety rail of the hospital bed, which he had lightly gripped for leverage, folded in his hand like wet cardboard. The room went deadly silent. Izuku stared at the twisted metal in his grip. He hadn't flexed. He hadn't tried to crush it. He had simply treated it like a solid object, and it had yielded like clay. He let go, terrified, and the mangled steel clattered against the frame. I didn't mean to, Izuku whispered, pulling his hands to his chest. He looked at his palms. They looked the same, scarred from years of hero note-taking and nervous habits. But under the skin, he could see a faint, bioluminescent green glow pulsing with his heartbeat. It appears the energy levels haven't receded as much as we hoped, the stone-skinned doctor said, adjusting her glasses. She didn't step closer. She stayed by the monitors. Midoriya-kun, do you know where you are? Musudafu General, Izuku said. How long? 2 days, the doctor replied. You've been in a state of hypermetabolic recovery. To be honest, we've never seen anything like it. Your cells aren't just repairing themselves, they're reinforcing. It's as if your body decided that the previous vessel wasn't strong enough to hold your quirk, so it's building a new one. My quirk. Izuku tasted the word. For 10 years, that word had been a phantom. Now, it felt like a curse. The doctors said it was dormant. They said I was quirkless. It was dormant, All Might spoke up. He stepped out of the shadows, his blue eyes piercing but kind. Until it wasn't. Stress, adrenaline, and the desire to save a life acted as the catalyst. You didn't just unlock a door, young Midoriya. You blew the wall down. Inko let out a small whimper. Is he dangerous? The question hung in the air, heavy and cruel. Izuku looked at his mother, begging her with his eyes to take it back. Don't be scared of me. Please, the doctor sighed, tapping her clipboard. Mrs. Midoriya, I will be blunt. Your son's body is currently generating a bioelectric energy field that rivals a nuclear reactor. We have had to replace his 4 drips 6 times because his body heat melts the plastic if he gets agitated. If he loses emotional control, yes. He is dangerous. He is a walking catastrophe class event waiting to happen. Izuku felt the tears welling up. Don't cry, he told himself. Crying is emotional. Emotion is heat. Heat melts the 4. He clenched his jaw, swallowing the sob. The machine monitoring his heart rate spiked, beep 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 beep, before slowing down as he forced himself to breathe. We need to discuss his lineage, the doctor said, turning to Inko. This kind of mutation doesn't appear out of thin air. It's an atavism. A genetic throwback. Midoriya-san, is there anyone in your family history with a power like this? Or perhaps a physical mutation? Abnormal strength? Rage issues? Inko twisted her handkerchief. She looked down at the floor, her face pale. I didn't think it mattered, she whispered. It was just an old family story. My grandmother used to tell me about her grandfather. He wasn't a hero. Heroes didn't really exist back then. He lived in the mountains. Go on, All Might urged gently. They called him a wild man, Inko said, her voice trembling. They said he was born with a tail. A monkey's tail. And that when the moon was full, or when he got into fights, he would lose his mind. He had incredible strength, but he couldn't control it. The village drove him out. We thought it was just a legend, or a metaphor for a villainous ancestor. All Might and the doctor exchanged a look. A tale, the doctor mused. And the rage? Yes, Inko nodded. My mother told me that the men in our line, they have short tempers. They love to fight. I thought Izuku was safe because he was so gentle. He's always been so gentle. She looked at her son, who was trembling in the bed, terrified of his own strength. He is gentle, All Might said firmly. His heart is in the right place. But his biology is at war with his psychology. The doctor closed the file. We can't keep him here. The hospital isn't equipped for a patient who can accidentally walk through reinforced concrete walls. He needs a specialist. Or a handler. I will take responsibility, All Might said. Inko looked up, eyes wide. All Might? I am already involved, the hero said. I was there when it happened. I saw the spark. I will oversee his training. Not to make him a hero, not yet, but to teach him how to exist without breaking the world around him. The discharge process was a nightmare of red tape and non-disclosure agreements. The government wanted to tag Izuku like a wild animal. The Hero Public Safety Commission wanted to classify his quirk as hazardous. It was only Nisa's influence, and All Might's insistence that kept Izuku from being shipped off to a containment facility. The ride home was silent. Izuku sat in the back of the taxi, hands folded in his lap, afraid to touch the door handle, afraid to touch the window. Every bump in the road made his internal energy spike, a sloshing liquid of pure power that threatened to spill over. When they got to the apartment, nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. The hallway seemed narrower. The door handle looked fragile. I'll make Katsudan, Inko said, her voice overly bright, trying to mask the tension. Your favorite. Thanks, Mom, Izuku murmured. He went to his room. It was a shrine to All Might. Posters, figures, bedsheets. He looked at the poster on his door, All Might in his Silver Age costume, striking a pose. I am here. Izuku reached out to touch the poster. His finger brushed the wood of the door. Crack. A splinter of wood popped out. He had barely touched it. He pulled his hand back as if burned. He backed away until his legs hit his bed, and he sank onto it, burying his face in his hands. He wasn't quirkless anymore. He was something else. He closed his eyes and tried to look inward, to find the source of the power. It wasn't like a battery. It felt like an ocean. A green, roiling ocean of magma. And floating in that ocean was something primal. A consciousness that wasn't his. It was hungry. It wanted to break things. It wanted to scream. Is this what Kaken feels all the time? He wondered. Is this why he's so angry? No. Kaken's explosions were on his palms. This explosion was in Izuku's soul. The next morning, All Might was waiting for him at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. The sun was just rising, casting a golden hue over the mountains of trash that plagued the coastline. Seagulls cried overhead, unaware that a god of destruction was walking among them. Izuku wore a tracksuit that felt too tight. His muscles had grown overnight again. He felt swollen, heavy. Young Midoriya! All Might called out. He was in his powered-down form, coughing slightly into a fist before straightening up. You made it without breaking any public transit. Good start. I walked, Izuku muttered, looking at the sand. I was afraid I'd crushed the bus handles. All Might nodded solemnly. A wise choice. Come. Sit. He gestured to a relatively clean patch of sand near a rusting washing machine. Izuku sat down, cross-legged. All Might sat opposite him. We have 10 months until the UA entrance exam, All Might began. Normally, I would offer a young hero a training plan to build muscle, to increase their capacity. But you... He looked Izuku up and down. You are already a cup overflowing. If we add more water you will spill. And your spill burns cities. Izuku gripped his knees. So what do I do? How do I get rid of it? You don't, All Might said. This power is part of you. It's in your DNA. You cannot excise it any more than you can remove your liver. You must learn to compress it. All Might picked up an empty aluminum can from the sand. He held it up. Imagine this can is your mind. The air inside is your power. Right now, the pressure is crushing the can from the inside out. All Might squeezed the can, crumpling it. We need to reinforce the can. Mental training? Izuku asked. Control, All Might corrected. Absolute, unwavering control. Your quirk, legendary as they are calling it, responds to your emotional state. Rage is the trigger. Adrenaline is the fuel. You need to learn to separate your actions from your feelings. All Might pointed to the trash heap. Your goal is not to clear this beach to build muscle. You could vaporization this entire pile with a single blast if you lost your temper. Your goal is to move the trash, without denting it. Izuku blinked. Without denting it? Precisely. All Might stood up and walked over to a rusted refrigerator. He patted it. This weighs, perhaps, 200 kilograms. I want you to pick it up, but if you grip it too hard and puncture the metal, you fail. If you throw it and it shatters, you fail. You must lift it with the gentleness of a mother holding a newborn, despite the fact that your muscles want to launch it into orbit. Izuku stood up. He looked at the fridge. It looked heavy. But to his new senses, it looked like styrofoam. Okay, Izuku breathed. I can do this. He walked up to the fridge. He bent his knees. He placed his hands on the sides. Don't crush it. Don't crush it. He lifted. The metal groaned. His fingers sank into the rusted steel like it was butter. Rip. He tore the side panel off the fridge completely. Izuku stared at the sheet of metal in his hand. He hadn't even felt resistance. All Might sighed, marking something in a notebook. Attempt 1 failure. The fridge is a casualty. Again. Month 1, the fragility of the world. The first month was hell. Not because of physical exhaustion, but because of mental fatigue. Izuku lived in a world made of glass. Every door he opened, every pencil he held, every step he took required 100% of his focus. If his mind wandered for a second, he broke something. He broke 12 alarm clocks. He shattered 4 ceramic bowls during dinner. He ripped the front door off its hinges because he was running late for school. School was a different kind of torture. Bakugo was ignoring him. Since the slime villain incident, Bakugo hadn't spoken a word to him. He didn't yell. He didn't explode. He just watched Izuku with a mix of suspicion and unease. The silence was louder than the explosions ever were. During lunch, Izuku sat alone. He held his chopsticks with trembling fingers. Softly. Softly. Snap. The chopsticks splintered. Damn it, he whispered, burying his face in his hands. Midoriya? He looked up. It was Uraraka, the girl from the entrance exam. No, wait, he hadn't taken the exam yet. It was just a classmate. A random girl. Wait, Uraraka is at the exam. This is a generic classmate. You okay, man? A boy asked. You've been breaking stuff all week. You finally get a quirk or something? Something like that, Izuku muttered, standing up. I have to go. He ran to the bathroom to splash water on his face. He looked in the mirror. His eyes looked tired. But behind the green irises, there was a yellow flicker. Let it out, the voice in his blood whispered. Stop holding back. It hurts to hold back. No, Izuku hissed at his reflection. The sink porcelain cracked under his grip. Shut up. Month 3, the meditation. Breathe in. Breathe out. Izuku sat on top of a pile of tires at the beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent oranges and purples. I can feel it, Izuku said, his eyes closed. It's like static. It's all over my skin. That is your bioelectricity, All Might explained, sitting nearby reading a book titled Zen for Beginners. It is leaking because you are tense. You are trying to bottle the ocean. You need to become the shore. Let the waves crash, but do not let them erode you. That's very abstract, All Might, Izuku grumbled. It's the best I've got. All Might admitted cheerfully. I just punch things. This is new for me too, Izuku smiled. It was a small, genuine smile. Focus on the heat, All Might directed. Where is it? My chest. My stomach. Move it. Push it down. Ground it. Izuku visualized the green magma. He imagined pushing it down into his legs, into his feet, and out into the sand. The ground around the tire pile began to rumble. The sand started to levitate, defying gravity. Small pebbles floated up past Izuku's face. Good, All Might said, watching the anti-gravity effect. You're channeling the overflow into the environment instead of your muscles. Keep doing that. It's heavy, Izuku strained. A vein popped in his forehead. The green aura flickered into existence, wrapping around him like a shroud. Control the size, All Might commanded. Don't let it flare. Keep it close to the skin. Like a second layer of clothes, Izuku gritted his teeth. He tried to pull the energy back. Roar. A spectral sound, like a great ape beating its chest, echoed in his mind. Izuku's eyes snapped open. They were white. Midoriya! All Might shouted, standing up. Izuku gasped, the white fading back to green. He fell forward, panting. The floating rocks dropped. I saw it again, Izuku whispered, sweating profusely. The monster. It has red eyes. A visual manifestation of the instinct, All Might mused. The wild man your mother spoke of. It seems your quirk has a predatory intelligence. It wants to take over when you are vulnerable. How do I beat it? You don't beat it, All Might said, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. The boy was radiating heat like a furnace. You accept it. It is you. You are the monster, and you are the hero. You must be both. Month 6, the accident. Progress was slow. Painfully slow. Izuku had managed to stop breaking furniture at home, mostly. He could hold a pen without snapping it, provided he didn't write too fast. But the anger was harder. It happened on a Tuesday. Izuku was walking home from the grocery store for his mom. He was taking a shortcut through a park. 3 older teenagers were picking on a kid. A classic scenario. A scenario Izuku had been on the receiving end of 1,000 times. Hey! Izuku called out. Leave him alone! The teenagers turned. They saw a scrawny, though deceptively muscular, middle schooler with messy green hair. Get lost, broccoli head, the leader sneered. He had a quirk that let him extend his fingers into spikes. Unless you want holes in you. They shoved the little kid to the ground. The kid scraped his knee and started crying. The sound of the crying triggered it. It wasn't a conscious choice. It was a biological switch. Protect the weak. Destroy the threat. Izuku felt the snap. The heat rushed from his stomach to his head in a nanosecond. I said. Izuku took a step forward. The ground beneath his sneaker exploded. Not cracked, exploded. A crater the size of a manhole cover formed instantly. The teenagers froze. Izuku looked up. His eyes were glowing gold. His hair began to rise, defying gravity, turning a jagged, yellowish green. Leave him alone. His voice was distorted, layered with a guttural growl. He took another step. The air pressure in the park dropped. The streetlights overhead shattered from the sheer density of the aura rising off him. The leader of the bullies turned pale. What is this guy? Izuku raised his hand. He didn't mean to attack. He just wanted them to move. But the energy didn't care about intent. It cared about output. A shockwave of green wind blasted from his palm. It hit the teenagers. They didn't just fall over, they were launched. They flew 50 feet, crashing into a chain-link fence, bending the metal poles. Silence fell over the park. The little kid on the ground stopped crying, staring at Izuku with wide, terrified eyes. Izuku stood there, his hand outstretched, smoke curling from his fingers. He blinked. The gold faded. He looked at the teenagers groaning in the fence. He looked at the terrified child. I hurt them, he thought. I used too much force. Again. Are you a villain? The little kid whispered, scooting away from him. The words pierced Izuku's heart sharper than any knife. No, Izuku whispered, his voice shaking. I'm trying to be a hero. He turned and ran. He ran all the way to the beach, his tears evaporating into steam before they could hit the ground. Month 9, the limiter. It's not working fast enough, Izuku said. He was sitting on a pile of cleared trash. The beach was looking better, but Izuku looked worse. He had dark circles under his eyes. He was terrified of sleeping because he might thrash and bring the building down. All Might looked at the boy. He saw the fraying edges of his sanity. The boy was holding back a hurricane with a paper umbrella. I have a gift, All Might said. He pulled a small metal case from his pocket. Inside was a sleek, metallic bracelet. It looked like heavy-duty tech. I called in a favor, All Might explained. From a friend in the support industry. A bright young inventor named Hatsum, under the tutelage of Power Loader. This is a biofeedback limiter. Izuku picked it up. It was heavy. It monitors your heart rate, adrenaline levels, and galvanic skin response, All Might said. If your energy output exceeds 5%, it will deliver a high-voltage shock to your nervous system. It will hurt. A lot. It shocks me into submission? Izuku asked, eyeing the device. It interrupts the neural pathway, All Might corrected. It breaks the feedback loop of rage. It's a training wheels system. A leash. Izuku snapped the bracelet onto his wrist. It hummed to life, a small blue light blinking. 5%? Izuku asked. For now, that is all your mind can handle without the wrath state taking over, All Might said. Even 5% of your power is significant. It is enough to crush rock. Enough to leap buildings. Izuku clenched his fist. The blue light remained steady. He tried to draw out more power. He pushed. 6%. 7%. Zap. Gah! Izuku yelped, clutching his wrist. The shock was sharp and biting. It works, Izuku said, rubbing his arm. He looked at All Might, and for the first time in months, he looked relieved. Thank you? I feel safer. It is a temporary measure, All Might warned. Eventually, you must be the one to stop the flow. But for the exam, it will do. The morning of the exam, 10 months had passed. The beach was unrecognizable. It wasn't just clean. The sand had been packed down hard from the sheer weight of Izuku's footsteps over the months. Izuku stood at the edge of the water. He wore his middle school uniform, but it fit differently now. He was broader. Taller. He had grown 6 inches in 10 months, a side effect of the mutation. At 15 years old, he stood nearly 6 feet tall, towering over his former self. He looked at his reflection in the water. He didn't look like the timid boy who had been bullied. He looked like a warrior. A sleeping giant. I'm ready, he whispered to the waves. You look it. All Might's voice came from behind him. Izuku turned. All Might was smiling, a true, proud smile. You have done the impossible, Izuku Midoriya. You have tamed the beast. You haven't conquered it, but you have made it sit. I'm still scared, Izuku admitted. What if I lose it during the exam? What if I hurt someone? That fear is good, All Might said. That fear is what keeps you human. The moment you stop fearing your power is the moment you become a villain. Hold on to that fear. Use it as a compass. All Might reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, wrapped energetic jelly packet. Breakfast. You'll need the calories. Your metabolism is burning through 10,000 a day. Izuku laughed nervously, taking the packet. Thanks. Go. All Might pointed toward the city. Go to UA, show them that power does not equal destruction. Show them that you are the master of your own destiny. Izuku nodded. He adjusted the limiter bracelet on his wrist, ensuring it was tight. He took a deep breath. The air tasted salty and fresh. He turned and began to run. He didn't sprint. He jogged. But with every step, he covered 10 meters. He moved with the grace of a predator, effortless and terrifyingly powerful. As he reached the train station, he saw the crowd of students heading toward the prestigious high school. He saw the uniforms, the excitement, the quirks on display. He kept his head down, clutching the strap of his backpack. Just keep it at 5%, he told himself. Just stay calm. Don't get angry. He stepped onto the train. The doors hissed shut. He was on his way to the place where heroes were made. But Izuku wasn't going there to learn how to fight villains. He was going there to learn how to fight himself. UA High School gates. The massive glass structure of UA loomed over him. The H-shaped building reflected the morning sun. Izuku stood at the gate, staring up. His heart rate ticked up. Beep. The bracelet warned him. Calm, he whispered. Blue skies. Calm ocean. Move it, Deku. The voice was low and dangerous. Izuku froze. He didn't turn around. He knew who it was. Katsuki Bakugo walked past him, hands in his pockets. Bakugo didn't look at him. He stared straight ahead, his jaw set tight. Don't think just because you have some freakish mutation now that you're better than me, Bakugo muttered as he passed. I'll still crush you. It was the old script. The old threat. But there was no heat in it. Bakugo sounded tired. Resigned, almost. Izuku watched him walk away. I'm not trying to be better than you, Kaken, Izuku whispered to the empty air. I'm just trying to be. He took a step forward. His foot caught on the edge of a paving stone. He tripped. Oh no, gravity took hold. He was going to faceplant in front of the UA gates. Don't catch yourself with your hands, his mind screamed. You'll shatter the pavement. He braced for impact, closing his eyes, preparing to just tank the hit with his face. It wouldn't hurt anyway. But the impact never came. He felt weightless. Are you okay? A bubbly voice. Izuku opened his eyes. He was floating an inch off the ground. A girl with a round face and brown hair was standing next to him, her hand touching his backpack. I stopped you with my quirk, she said, smiling brightly. It's bad luck to fall before the exam, right? She released him. He dropped the inch, landing softly. Izuku stammered. His heart rate spiked. Not from anger. From social anxiety. Beep beep beep. The bracelet flashed yellow. Oh. Is that a health monitor? The girl asked, pointing at his wrist. Do you have a heart condition? Sort of, Izuku managed to say, his face turning red. I get excited easily. Well, good luck. She waved, walking off. I'm Ochako Uraraka. Let's do our best. Izuku stood there, watching her go. He touched his chest. The heat inside was swirling, but it wasn't the jagged, burning heat of rage. It was warmer. Softer. I talked to a girl, he whispered, a dopey smile spreading across his face. Then, the bell rang. The reality of the situation crashed back down. The written exam. The practical exam. The robots. Izuku clenched his fist. The green glow pulsed faintly under his skin, just for a second, before the limiter shocked him with a static sting. Focus. He walked through the gates. The dragon inside him stirred, sensing a battlefield. Soon, the instinct whispered. Soon we break things. Not today, Izuku muttered, grabbing the strap of his bag tighter. Today we pass. The written exam was a test of patience, not intellect. For Izuku Midoriya, sitting in a chair for 3 hours was physically painful. His body, now a vessel for a planetary-grade energy source, did not like being sedentary. The desk felt too small for his broadened shoulders. The pencil felt like a twig that would snap if he applied a fraction too much pressure. Beneath the collar of his stiff middle school uniform, a bead of sweat rolled down his neck, not from nervousness about the math questions. He had studied diligently for years, but from the constant, low-level electrical shocks pulsing against his wrist. ZZT, the limiter bracelet. Hatsum's invention. It was working, but barely. Izuku's resting heart rate was naturally higher than a normal human's now, his metabolism running like a furnace. Every time he encountered a difficult question and felt a spike of frustration or adrenaline, the bracelet delivered a warning sting. Keep it down, he told himself, filling in a bubble on the Scantron sheet. Breathe. Don't melt the paper. He could hear the scratching of pencils around him. To his enhanced hearing, it sounded like 1,000 beetles skittering on dry leaves. He could hear the heartbeat of the boy 2 rows over, thump thump, thump thump, rapid and anxious. When the bell finally rang, signaling the end of the written portion, Izuku didn't just stand up. He practically unfolded himself, joints popping with the release of tension. He grabbed his bag, moving with deliberate slowness, and exited the room, leaving a faint scent of ozone in his wake. The orientation. The auditorium was packed. Students from all over the country gathered in the dark, illuminated only by the spotlight shining on the eccentric pro-hero, Present Mike. Everybody say hey. Present Mike screamed. Silence. Tough crowd. Izuku sat near the back, clutching his notebook. He was muttering, analyzing the hero's voice quirk, but he was keeping his voice lower than usual. He didn't want to draw attention. He just wanted to be invisible. But invisibility was hard when you were 15 years old, 6 feet tall, and radiated a palpable sense of danger. The students sitting immediately next to him had scooted their chairs away, instinctively sensing the heat rolling off him. Now, let's check out the layout. Present Mike continued, the screen behind him displaying the battle center map. You'll be conducting 10-minute mock city battles. You can bring whatever gear you want, but you'll be split up. Izuku looked at his card. Battle Center B. He glanced to his right. Katsuki Bakugo was sitting there, legs crossed, staring at his own card. TCH, Bakugo scoffed, noticing Izuku's gaze. Looks like we're split up. Lucky for you, Deku. If we were in the same center, I'd steal every kill right from under your nose. I know, Kaken, Izuku whispered. Good luck. Bakugo's eyes narrowed. He looked at the metal bracelet on Izuku's wrist. You still wearing that dog collar All Might gave you? It helps, Izuku said, rubbing the metal. Pathetic, Bakugo spat, facing forward again. If you have to be leashed, you don't belong here. Excuse me. A hand shot up in the middle of the auditorium. A boy with glasses and a strict posture stood up, the spotlight catching the gleam of his lenses. I have a question. The boy shouted, pointing at the screen. The printout says there are 4 types of villains, but you've only explained 3. If this is a printing error, you should be ashamed. We are here to be molded into exemplary heroes. He then whipped around, pointing a stiff finger directly at the back row. Directly at Izuku. And you? The large one with the green hair. Izuku froze. Me? You've been vibrating this entire time. The boy accused. The floor is literally shaking. And your muttering is distracting. If you're just here to be a nuisance, please leave. Every head in the auditorium turned. Hundreds of eyes. Izuku felt the blood rush to his face. The embarrassment was hot, instant, and sharp. Beep beep beep. The bracelet flashed yellow. Sorry, Izuku stammered, bowing his head. I can't help it. Okay. Examinee 7111. Present Mike interjected, saving Izuku from further humiliation. Thanks for the segue. The 4th villain is worth 0 points. Think of it as a hurdle. A gimmick, if you see it, my advice? Run, Izuku thought. I'm good at that. Battle Center B. The bus ride to the testing grounds was suffocating. Izuku stood near the doors, holding the rail with 2 fingers, terrified of crushing it. When they arrived, the scale of Yui became truly apparent. The battle center wasn't a room, it was a city. A full-scale urban replica with paved streets, multi-story buildings, and streetlights. A crowd of examinees gathered before the massive gates. Izuku scanned the crowd. He saw the boy with the glasses, Ida, doing stretches. He saw the nice girl who had saved him from falling earlier, Uraraka, trying to calm her nerves. Izuku took a step toward her. Maybe he should thank her properly. Agonizing over the details, a hand chopped the air in front of Izuku's chest. It was Ida. That girl is trying to focus, Ida said sternly. Are you planning to distract her with your mumbling again? No, I just... Izuku backed up. He felt clumsy. Too big. I just wanted to say thanks. Focus on your own exam, Ida scolded. We are rivals here. Izuku nodded, stepping back into the shadows of the gate. He checked his gear. He wore a simple green tracksuit he had bought at a discount store, reinforced with some knee pads. And, of course, the limiter on his left wrist. He closed his eyes. Okay. The plan. I can't use energy blasts. That's an immediate disqualification and probably a manslaughter charge. I can't fly. I haven't figured that out without creating a sonic boom. I have to rely on physical strength. But how much strength? He flexed his hand. The air popped between his fingers. 5%. Stay at 5%. Just hit them hard enough to break the circuits. Start. President Mick's voice boomed from atop a tower, startling the students. What's wrong? There are no countdowns in real battles. Mike yelled. Run. Go. The die is cast. Izuku hesitated for a fraction of a second, his brain processing the command. The other students surged forward, a wave of quirks activating, engines revving, arms growing, bodies turning to stone. Move. Izuku kicked off the ground. Crack. The pavement beneath his starting foot shattered into gravel. He launched forward, passing half the pack in 3 seconds. The wind whipped his face. He felt fast. Faster than he had ever been. He turned a corner into the fake city. A robot, painted a dull olive green, rolled out from an alley. 1 point was painted on its chest. Target acquired, the robot synthesized, raising a rubber bullet machine gun. Izuku didn't slow down. He couldn't hesitate. He charged. 5%, he gritted out. He pulled his fist back. He didn't use proper form. He just used momentum. He slammed his fist into the robot's chassis. Clang. The impact vibrated up his arm. The metal crumpled inward, the robot flying backward and smashing into a brick wall. Sparks showered down. Izuku stood there, shaking his hand. It hurt. Not a lot, but a dull throb. Without his chi coating his skin, his aura, he wasn't invulnerable. He was just incredibly dense meat hitting steel. "1 point," he whispered. "Out of the way." A laser beam shot past Izuku's ear, blasting the head off a 2-pointer that had been sneaking up on him. A blond boy with a sparkling cape posed on a balcony. "Merci!" the boy shouted. Izuku shook his head and kept running. 10 minutes later, the exam was chaos. Explosions rocked the streets. Debris rained from buildings. The air was filled with dust and the screech of tearing metal. Izuku was struggling. Not physically. He wasn't tired. He wasn't even out of breath. He was struggling with restraint. He had 28 points. It wasn't enough. He knew it. He saw Ida zoom past, kicking a robot's head off with engine-fueled precision. He saw a girl with vines for hair dismantling 3 robots at once. They were using their quirks freely. They were letting go. Izuku was fighting with one hand tied behind his back. Every time he punched a robot, he had to calculate the force. Too soft, it doesn't break. Too hard, I shatter the street and endanger others. He rounded a corner and saw a 3-pointer, a massive scorpion-like machine. It lunged at him. Izuku dodged, weaving under the tail. He grabbed the leg. He ripped the leg off. The metal screeched. He swung the severed leg like a club, smashing the robot's main body. Beep beep zap. Gah! The limiter shocked him. His heart rate had spiked to 140. Not now! Izuku yelled at the bracelet. I'm fighting! He dropped the robot leg. 31 points. Is it enough? The average is probably 40. I need more. He scanned the street. It was empty. The other students had cleared this sector. Damn it, Izuku hissed. The heat in his stomach was rising. It was getting harder to ignore the voice in his head. The voice that said, just let it out. 1 blast. Clear the whole block. No, he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. I have to do this the right way. Then, the ground jumped. It wasn't a vibration. It was a quake. Izuku stumbled. A cloud of dust billowed from the north end of the city. The sun was blocked out. A shadow fell over the street, long and terrifying. Izuku looked up. And up. And up. It was the 0-pointer. It was colossal. It had to be 20 stories tall. Its treads were the size of houses. Its green faceplate glowed with menacing red eyes. It moved forward, and a building crumpled like paper under its weight. Threat level, extreme, the robot broadcasted, its voice shaking the windows of the remaining structures. That's not a hurdle, Izuku whispered, his eyes wide. That's a monster. The psychology of the crowd shifted instantly. The competitive spirit vanished, replaced by primal fear. Run! It's huge! Get away! It's the 0-pointer! Students streamed past Izuku, screaming. The dust cloud consumed them. Izuku turned to run. It was the logical choice. Present Mike said to run? It was worth 0 points. There was no reason to fight it. He took a step back. Ow! The sound was faint, buried under the rumble of the collapsing buildings and the tread clatter of the Titan. But Izuku's ears that could hear a pin drop in a storm, picked it up. He stopped. He turned back toward the dust. Through the haze he saw her. The nice girl. Uraraka. She was on the ground. A piece of rubble from the crushed building had pinned her leg. She was trying to lift it, but it was too heavy. The 0-pointer was looming over her. Its massive metal hand was reaching down, not to grab, but to swipe the street clear. She looked up at the robot, her face paralyzed with terror. Izuku felt the world stop. He saw the slime villain again. He saw Bakugo suffocating. He saw the weak dying while the strong watched. Are you going to run? The dragon in his blood asked. Are you going to run like a coward? No, Izuku said. Then what will you do? I'll break it. The switch flipped. It wasn't a slow build this time. It was instant. Izuku's heart hammered a rhythm of war. Thump thump. Thump thump. The limiter bracelet shrieked. Beep 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 beep. Shut up, Izuku growled. He grabbed the bracelet with his right hand. He didn't unclasp it. He crushed it. With a spray of sparks and plastic shards, the device shattered. The dam broke. The energy that had been bottled up for 10 months, compressed and pressurized, exploded outward. Gray-ah! Izuku screamed. A pillar of green light erupted from his body, blasting the dust away in a perfect circle. The pavement beneath him disintegrated, turning into molten slag instantly. The students running away stopped. They turned around, shielding their eyes from the blinding emerald glare. What is that? Ida yelled, skidding to a halt. An explosion? In the center of the light, Izuku changed. His muscles swelled, tearing the sleeves of his tracksuit. His green hair stood straight up, turning a luminous, electric yellow-green. His eyes lost their pupils, becoming blank pools of white fury. This wasn't 5%. This wasn't even 100%. This was the wrath state. The Akari. The power of the great ape condensed into human form. The zero-pointer paused. Its sensors picked up a massive energy spike. Error. Anomaly detected. Izuku crouched. The ground groaned under the pressure. Gravity seemed to bend around him, rocks floating into the air before being vaporized by his aura. He looked at the robot. He didn't see a test. He saw an enemy. He launched. He didn't jump. He fired himself. Boom! The sound barrier shattered instantly. A shockwave leveled the streetlights on the block. Izuku was a green blur, a comet ascending from the earth. He didn't aim for the head. He didn't aim for the joints. He aimed for the center of mass. Uraraka, looking up through her tears, saw a green streak tear through the sky. Izuku flew. He didn't know how he was flying. He was just propelling himself with pure rage energy. He collided with the zero-pointer's chest plate. There was no resistance. He was a diamond bullet hitting a sheet of tin foil. Izuku tore through the armored plating. He tore through the internal wiring, the hydraulics, the engine block, the reactor core. He exited out the back of the robot. Skreebom. The massive machine didn't fall over. It expanded. A massive hole, 20 feet wide, had been punched clean through its torso. The edges of the wound were glowing red, melting from the friction and heat of Izuku's passage. The robot shuddered. Its red eyes flickered and died. With a groan of twisting metal that sounded like a dying wail, the zero-pointer collapsed in on itself, the top half sliding off the bottom half, crashing to the ground with an earth-shaking thud. Debris rained down. Dust billowed up, higher than the buildings. Silence descended on Battle Center B. The other students stood frozen, mouths agape. They weren't cheering. They were horrified. Did he just kill it? Someone whispered. High in the air, the momentum left Izuku. The red haze of rage began to recede, replaced by the confusion of freefall. The white faded from his eyes. His pupils returned. Huh! Izuku blinked. He looked down. He was falling from 300 feet. Oh no! He flailed his arms. I can't fly. I don't know how to fly. Slap! He saw Uraraka. She was floating on a piece of debris she had touched earlier. She was hurt, dizzy, and sick, but she slapped Izuku's cheek as he fell past her level. Weightlessness took over. Izuku halted in midair, floating like a balloon. Release! Uraraka gagged, putting her fingers together. Izuku dropped the remaining 10 feet. He landed on his feet, but his legs were jelly. He collapsed to his knees, panting. His tracksuit was in tatters. His upper body was exposed, steam rolling off his skin. His skin was flushed red, veins glowing faintly green as they cooled down. He looked at his wrist. The limiter was gone. A burn mark circled his wrist where it had short-circuited. 1 minute left. Present Mick's voice echoed, though it sounded shaky. Izuku looked up at the wreckage of the zero-pointer. It was a mountain of scrap. He looked at Uraraka. She was throwing up rainbows in the corner. He looked at the other students. They were staring at him like he was the villain. Izuku tried to speak, but his voice was a deep, raspy growl. He cleared his throat. I saved her. No one moved. The buzzer rang. Time's up. Observation room. The room was dark, lit only by the wall of monitors. The teachers of UA sat in silence. On the main screen, the burning carcass of the zero-pointer smoked. That? Midnight whispered, breaking the silence. That was virile. That was reckless, Vlad King grunted, crossing his arms. He destroyed school property completely. That robot costs millions. And the force he used. If a student had been caught in that shockwave, they would be dead. He saved the girl, All Might said. He was leaning forward, his hands clasped tightly. He was sweating. He broke the limiter. He went Ikari. He saved the girl by detonating a nuke in a residential district. A tired voice drawled. Shota Aizawa, Eraserhead, stared at the screen with cold, black eyes. Look at the data. When he launched, the structural integrity of the surrounding buildings dropped by 40% due to the sonic boom alone. He has zero control. He is a liability. But the potential. President Mike argued. Did you see that power? He punched a hole through a zero-pointer. He's stronger than All Might was at that age. Strength without control is just violence, Aizawa countered. I vote to fail him. If he comes to my class, I'll just have to expel him later when he inevitably hurts someone. Now, Principal Niza piped up. The small mammal was sitting in his high chair, sipping tea. His paws were trembling slightly. Let's not be hasty. Niza rewound the footage. He paused it on the moment Izuku turned back. The moment he ignored the escape route to face the Titan. The entrance exam is not just about combat ability, Niza said. It is about the spirit of a hero. While Mr. Midoriya's power is frighteningly excessive, his motivation was pure. He acted to save another when the others fled. Niza turned to the other judges. Rescue points. We have them for a reason. And destroying a threat of that magnitude to save a life? That is the ultimate rescue. He's still dangerous, Aizawa insisted. Yes, Niza agreed, his black eyes glinting. Which is why we cannot let him roam free. We accept him. We watch him. And if he breaks, we contain him. Yui is the only place strong enough to hold him. The aftermath. Izuku sat on the curb outside the battle center. Recovery Girl was wrapping his wrist. You foolish boy, the old woman scolded, smacking him on the shin with her cane. You burned yourself destroying that bracelet. Do you know how complex that machinery was? I'm sorry, Izuku mumbled. He felt drained. Not of energy. He still had plenty of that, but of emotion. The crash after the rage was heavy. I had to. She was stuck. Here, she handed him a gummy. You don't need my quirk. Your body is already healing the burn. It's unnatural. Izuku looked at his wrist. The skin was indeed knitting itself back together, the red fading to pink. His regenerative factor was spiking. Midoriya-kun! Ida marched over. He looked stiff, shaken. He stopped in front of Izuku and bowed deeply, a perfect 90-degree angle. I misjudged you. Ida shouted at the pavement. I thought you were merely a distraction. But you discerned the true nature of the test. You sacrificed your points to save a fellow examinee. It was a noble act. I apologize for my rudeness, Izuku blinked. Thanks? But I didn't discern anything. I just panicked. Humble too. Ida straightened up. I am Tenya Ida. I hope we meet again in the academia. Ida marched off. Izuku sat there. Sacrificed my points. The realization hit him like a cold bucket of water. I have 0 points, Izuku whispered. He looked at his hands. I beat the giant robot, but that's worth 0. And I'd barely got 30 points from the small ones before that. He put his head in his hands. I failed. The heat inside him simmered, unhappy with the despair. The dragon didn't understand points. It only understood victory. And they had won. Why was the host sad, young man? Izuku looked up. It was the girl, Uraraka. She looked better though her face was pale. Thank you, she said softly. For saving me. That was amazing. Scary, but amazing. I failed, Izuku told her, his voice hollow. I didn't get enough points. Uraraka frowned. She looked back toward the judge's tent. That doesn't seem right, she said. If you failed for saving someone, then this school is stupid. She turned and walked toward the teachers, determination in her stride. Izuku watched her go. He wanted to hope, but the logic was cruel. The acceptance letter would come in a week. He stood up, his joints popping. He picked up his tattered backpack. He walked home alone. The sun was setting, casting long shadows. He felt the familiar weight of the world on his shoulders, but this time, he also felt the weight of the monster under his skin, waiting for the next fight. He looked at his reflection in a shop window. His eyes were green again. But deep down, buried in the emerald, a speck of gold remained. The legendary Super Saiyan had awakened. And UA High wasn't ready. The UA High school uniform was a masterpiece of tailoring, but to Izuku Midoriya, it felt like a straitjacket. He stood in front of the full-length mirror in his bedroom, tugging at the gray blazer. The buttons were straining against his chest. In the 10 months of All Might's Hell Spider training regimen, combined with the aggressive mutation of his dormant genetics, Izuku had grown. He was no longer the scrawny boy who blended into the background. He stood 6 feet tall, his shoulders broad and dense with muscle that seemed harder than granite. Izuku? Inko's voice came from the hallway, soft and trembling. Are you ready? You don't want to be late on your first day. Izuku took a deep breath. In. Out. He could feel it. The hum. It was always there now, a low-frequency vibration under his skin, like a high-tension power line buzzing in the silence. The limiter bracelet 2.0, a sleeker black band provided by All Might after the incident with the zero-pointer, sat snugly on his left wrist. The readout glowed a calm, steady blue. Heart rate, 55 BPM. Energy output, 0.01%, passive leakage. I'm ready, Mom, Izuku said. He grabbed his yellow backpack. He looked at the All Might poster on his door one last time. The hero's smile seemed to challenge him. Control it. Master it. He opened the door. Inko gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. She teared up instantly. You look so grown up, she sobbed. And so big. When did my baby get so big? It's the quirk, Mom, Izuku said gently, hugging her carefully. He had to be mindful of his strength every second of every day. A hug could turn into a crushed ribcage if he let his emotions spike. I'll be fine. I promise I won't break anything today. Just come home safe, she whispered. Izuku nodded. He stepped out of the apartment and into the morning sun. The world felt fragile. The concrete beneath his feet, the railing of the stairs, the door handle, it all felt like it was made of wet tissue paper. Walk softly, the voice in his head, All Might's voice, reminded him. You are a tank in a world of glass. UA High School, Class 1A. The hallways of UA were massive, designed to accommodate students with gigantification quirks or mutation types, yet Izuku still felt claustrophobic. Other students parted around him like water around a stone. They stared. Not just because he was new, but because of the pressure. Even with the limiter, Izuku radiated a subconscious threat signal. It was the biological response of prey sensing a predator. He found the door. 1A. It was enormous. Here we go, he whispered. Please let it be a normal class. Please let the others be nice. He slid the door open. Don't put your feet on the desk. Ha! The hope for a normal class evaporated instantly. Tenya Ida, the glasses-wearing engine boy from the exam, was standing over a desk, chopping his hands robotically. And sitting at that desk, with his feet crossed arrogantly over the surface, was Katsuki Bakugo. It's disrespectful to the upperclassmen and the people who made the desk. Ida shouted. Geez, you're loud, Bakugo grunted. He looked bored, but there was a tension in his jaw that hadn't been there in middle school. His red eyes were scanning the room, alert. Then, the door opened. Bakugo's head snapped toward the entrance. Izuku stood in the frame. The room went quiet. Ida froze. He adjusted his glasses, turning sharply. Ah! It is you! The one who realized the true nature of the exam. Ida marched over, hand extended. I am Tenya Ida from semi-private academy. I heard, Izuku stammered, shaking the hand gingerly. I'm Midoriya. Izuku. Midoriya-kun. Ida boomed. You perceived that the zero-pointer was a test of valor. I was blind to it. I judged you prematurely. For that, I apologize. No, really, I just panicked. Hey, Deku. The voice was low. Dangerous. Ida stepped aside. Bakugo remained seated, but his hands were gripping the armrests of his chair. The plastic was smoking slightly. Keikaken, Izuku acknowledged, clutching his backpack strap. In middle school, Bakugo would have exploded. He would have yelled, screamed, maybe thrown a punch. But he didn't. He just stared. He stared at Izuku's chest, where the muscles strained against the uniform. He stared at the limiter on Izuku's wrist. Bakugo remembered the green light. He remembered the feeling of being suffocated by the slime villain, and then the sensation of a power so vast it made All Might feel distant. "You got in," Bakugo said, his voice devoid of its usual screeching arrogance. It was quiet, simmering hate. "With 0 points. They gave me rescue points," Izuku explained, feeling the heat rise in his stomach. "Stay calm. Don't provoke him." "Rescue points," Bakugo scoffed. He looked away, staring out the window. "Whatever. Just don't get in my way, or I'll kill you." It was a standard Bakugo threat, but it lacked conviction. It sounded defensive. "Oh. It's you!" The plain-looking boy. Izuku turned. Ochako Uraraka stood there, beaming. "You got in. I was so worried. I tried to give you my points, but they said, if you're here to make friends, pack up and leave." The voice came from the floor. The students looked down. A yellow sleeping bag was lying in the doorway like a giant caterpillar. A face peered out, tired, unshaven, with bloodshot eyes. "This is the hero course," the man mumbled, unzipping the bag and standing up. He looked like a homeless person, but the air around him felt heavy. "It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Time is limited. You kids aren't rational enough." He reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a blue gym uniform. "I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Put these on and head to the grounds." The P grounds. The locker room had been awkward. Izuku tried to change quickly in the corner, but it was impossible to hide his physique. When he took off his shirt, the chatter in the room stopped. His back was a landscape of muscle, dense and corded. Scars from the 10 months of clearing the beach littered his arms, but it was the faint, greenish glow pulsing through the veins in his shoulders that drew eyes. "Whoa, dude," a boy with red spiky hair, Kirishima said, walking over. "You are shredded. What kind of workout do you do? Beach cleanup?" Izuku mumbled, pulling the gym track jacket on quickly. It was tight around the biceps. "Man, I'm jealous," a short boy with purple balls for hair, Mineta, whimpered. "You look like a movie monster." "Monster." Izuku flinched. He zipped the jacket to his chin. "We should go. Sensei is waiting." Outside, the sun was high and hot. The class gathered in a loose semicircle around Aizawa. "A quirk apprehension test?" The class shouted in unison. "What about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting?" Uraraka asked. "If you're going to become a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events," Aizawa drawled, looking at his clipboard. "UA's selling point is freedom of style. That applies to the teachers as well." He looked up, his black eyes boring into them. "Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. You did these in middle school without using your quirks. That's irrational. The Ministry of Education is procrastinating." Aizawa turned to Bakugo. "Bakugo, you finished first in the entrance exam practical. In middle school, what was your best result for the softball throw?" 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. "Try it with your quirk," Aizawa said, tossing him a ball. "Anything goes as long as you stay in the circle." Bakugo walked to the circle. He stretched his shoulders. He glanced back at Izuku for a split second, a sneer curling his lip. "Watch this, Deku. This is real power." "Dai!" Bakugo threw the ball. As it left his fingertips, he detonated a massive explosion. The blast propelled the ball like a cannon shot. Boom! Dust kicked up. Aizawa held up a device. 705.2 meters. "Whoa! 700 meters? Kaminari shouted. "That looks like fun!" Mina Ashido cheered. "We can use our quirks as much as we want." "Fun?" Aizawa's voice dropped an octave. The atmosphere chilled instantly. "You have 3 years to become a hero. Will you have an attitude like that during a crisis?" He smiled. It was a terrifying, jagged smile. "All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential, and will be punished with expulsion." "Huh!" The panic was immediate. "Expulsion?" Uraraka cried. "It's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters. Highway pileups. Rampaging villains. Calamity is always unreasonable, Aizawa said coldly. Our job is to overturn it. Go plus ultra. Izuku felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. Expulsion. If he was expelled, he lost All Might's guidance. He lost the support items. He would be alone with the dragon. I can't fail, Izuku thought. He looked at his wrist. But I can't let go either. If he used 100%, he would destroy the school. If he used 5%, he might not be enough. No. Wait. All Might had said his base physical stats were already superhuman due to the mutation. Even without the active energy, maybe he could do it. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida and Azuri were up first. Ida clocked 3.04 seconds. Then it was Izuku's turn. He was paired against Bakugo. Ready. The robot camera intoned. Bakugo crouched, smoke rising from his palms. I'll leave you in the dust, Deku. Izuku didn't respond. He got into a runner's stance. He dug his toes into the track. Don't use the aura, he told himself. Just muscles. Push. Go. Crack. Bakugo propelled himself with explosions, flying down the track. Izuku didn't fly. He ran, but his start was so explosive that the starting block disintegrated. He tore up the track with every stride. He was a blur of green and blue. He crossed the line. 4.13 seconds, the robot announced. Bakugo landed a split second later. 4.15 seconds. Bakugo stared at the board. He blinked. What? Bakugo whispered. Izuku stood up, panting slightly. He hadn't used a drop of ki. That was just leg strength. Bakugo grabbed Izuku's collar. You beat me? Without your damn quirk? Without the glow? I just ran Kaken, Izuku said, gently removing Bakugo's hand. He squeezed the wrist slightly, just a warning. Bakugo flinched at the hardness of the grip. Aizawa watched from the sidelines, marking his clipboard. Physical strength is off the charts. But he's holding back. He's terrified. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku took the digital hand dynamometer. Just squeeze, right? He asked the machine. He squeezed. He felt the metal resistance. It felt like squeezing a juice box. Crunch. The machine imploded in his hand. Plastic shards flew. The screen cracked, displaying a glitching ERR. Ah! Izuku dropped the remains. I'm sorry! I broke it. Mizo Shoji, who had just scored 540 kilograms, stared. Did he just crush the sensors? Infinite grip? Mineta shrieked. He's a gorilla! A monster! Aizawa sighed. Midoriya. That's coming out of your tuition. Test 3, standing long jump. Izuku stood at the line. Just a hop, he thought. Don't jump to the moon. He bent his knees. He jumped. He cleared the sandbox. He cleared the grass beyond the sandbox. He landed on the pavement 30 meters away, cracking the asphalt upon landing. He didn't even use a blast, Todoroki muttered, watching closely. The dual-haired boy's eyes were narrowed. He's doing this with pure physical stats. Test 4, repeated side steps. This was harder. Izuku was fast, but he was heavy. He moved side to side, but his momentum was hard to check. He ended up digging trenches in the ground with his shoes, ruining the turf, but his speed was undeniable. The tension. By the time they reached the final event, the ball throw, the class was looking at Izuku differently. They weren't looking at him like the underdog. They were looking at him like the final boss. Izuku stood off to the side, drinking water. The limiter was beeping softly. Heart rate, 90 BPM. The physical exertion was raising his metabolism. The heat was building. Hey, Izuku turned. Bakugo was there. The explosive boy was shaking. Not from fear, but from a cocktail of rage and confusion that was about to boil over. You've been mocking me, Bakugo hissed. The air around him smelled like burnt sugar. For years. You pretended to be weak. You watched me run my mouth, all while you were hiding this? He gestured to the destruction Izuku had left in his wake during the tests. It wasn't like that, Kaken, Izuku said softly. I didn't know. It was dormant. Don't lie to me. Bakugo's voice rose. Sparks popped on his skin. You think you're better than me? You think you can just walk in here and take my spot? I'm the protagonist of this world, not you. The windows of the classroom building behind them, 3 stories up, suddenly developed spiderweb cracks. Kartink. The glass groaned. Bakugo froze. He looked up at the windows. He looked back at Izuku. Izuku hadn't moved. But his eyes, for a second, the green iris had been swallowed by gold. The air pressure around them had dropped. I'm not trying to take your spot, Izuku said. His voice was deeper. It vibrated in Bakugo's chest. But I'm not going to stand behind you anymore. Bakugo took a step back. It was instinctive. His body recognized a threat that his pride refused to acknowledge. Midoriya! Aizawa's voice cut through the tension like a whip. You're up. Ball throw. The pitch. Izuku walked to the circle. The class watched in silence. Uraraka had just scored infinity by removing the ball's gravity. The bar was set impossibly high. Izuku held the ball. It felt tiny in his hand. If I throw this with just muscle, I can probably get 800 meters, Izuku calculated. But Aizawa-sensei said to use our quirks. If I don't use the energy, he might think I'm not taking it seriously. He looked at Aizawa. The teacher was watching him like a hawk. I have to show him control. I have to show him I can use the dragon without burning the village. Izuku took a breath. He widened his stance. He closed his eyes. He reached into the ocean of magma inside him. Just a drop. Just a single drop. He channeled the ki. It flowed from his stomach, through his shoulder, down his arm. Green lightning began to arc around his body. The ground beneath the circle began to tremble. Pebbles floated into the air. The wind picked up, swirling around him in a cyclone. Here it comes, Kirishima whispered. The green flash. Izuku's eyes snapped open. They were glowing bright yellow. Smash! He whipped his arm forward. Silence. The ball dropped from his hand and rolled a few feet. The green lightning vanished. The floating rocks fell. The heat dissipated instantly. Izuku blinked. He looked at his hand. It felt numb. Empty. What? He looked at Aizawa. The teacher's hair was floating. His scarf was levitating around his neck. And his eyes were glowing red. I erased your quirk, Aizawa stated flatly. Erased? Izuku stammered. But my strength. I can't erase your mutation, Aizawa said, walking closer. Your abnormal muscle density and durability are biological. But that energy projection? That legendary aura? That is an emission, and I shut it off. Aizawa stopped in front of Izuku. He looked tired but intense. From what I saw in the entrance exam and the reports, Aizawa said, you have zero control. When you use that power, you enter a berserker state. You destroy everything around you. I'm learning, Izuku pleaded. I have the bracelet. Tools are crutches, Aizawa snapped. What happens when it breaks? Like it did against the zero-pointer? Aizawa leaned in. You are not a hero, Midoriya. You are a natural disaster. A walking nuke. If you lose your temper in a hostage situation, you won't save the hostages. You'll vaporize them along with the villain. The words cut deep. So, Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Do you plan to become a liability? Or do you plan to become a hero? He blinked. His hair fell back down. I've returned your quirk. You have one more throw. Get it over with so I can expel you. Izuku stood there, the ball at his feet. Liability. He picked up the ball. The class was whispering. He got scolded. Is he going to be sent home? A teacher who can erase quirks. That's Eraserhead. Izuku looked at the ball. He's right, Izuku thought. If I use the aura, I break the world. Even at 5%, the wind pressure alone is dangerous. He needed to focus. He needed to compress. Don't fill the whole body. That triggers the transformation. That wakes the ape. Focus it. Izuku gripped the ball. He visualized the energy. Not as a flood, but as a laser. He moved all the power, the rage, the heat, the dragon, and shoved it into the tip of his index finger. His finger glowed a blinding white-green. It throbbed with pain. The skin threatened to split. Just the finger. He wound up. He threw. At the very last millisecond, as the ball left his hand, he flicked his finger. Smash! It wasn't a throw. It was a railgun shot. A shockwave exploded from his hand. It blasted the dust off the field. Aizawa had to shield his eyes. Bakugo shielded his face. The ball vanished. It broke the sound barrier instantly. Crack! A thunderclap that set off car alarms in the distance. The clouds above the field parted in a straight line. A vacuum tunnel bored through the sky. Izuku stood in the circle. His finger was purple, bruised from the recoil, but not broken. His durability held it together. He turned to Aizawa. His eyes were green. He was sweating, but he was sane. I didn't lose control, Izuku panted, clutching his throbbing hand. Aizawa looked at the tablet. The device was trying to calculate the distance. The numbers spun rapidly before settling on a symbol. Infinity orbit. Aizawa stared at the screen. Then he looked at the boy. He saw the bruise on the finger. He saw the shaking legs. But he saw the clarity in the eyes. He concentrated the output of a ballistic missile into a fingertip, Aizawa thought. And he stopped the overflow. Aizawa lowered the tablet. A creepy smile spread across his face. Zero potential, huh? Aizawa muttered. He turned the screen to the class. Midoriya. Still in the running. The explosion. The class erupted. He threw it into orbit? That power. It's like All Might. His finger is bruised, but he's standing. One person wasn't cheering. Bakugo stood frozen. His brain was short-circuiting. He hit it. He hit it. He hit it. He was laughing at me. All this time. DKU. The screen was primal. Bakugo launched himself. He didn't think. He ignited his palms. You bastard! Tell me how you did that. He crossed the distance in a second. He raised his right hand, aiming a blast directly at Izuku's face. Izuku saw him coming. The threat registered. Attack. The dragon woke up. Izuku's eyes flashed gold. He didn't dodge. He stepped into the attack. He raised his arm to backhand Bakugo, a blow that, at this range and with his current adrenaline, would likely decapitate the blonde. Stop. Suddenly, the scarf wrapped around both of them. It tightened like a python. Gah! Bakugo choked, his explosions dying out. Izuku stopped, his arm frozen mid-swing by the binding cloth. The gold faded from his eyes, leaving him blinking in confusion. My cloth is stiff. Aizawa muttered, holding the ends of the capture weapon. His hair was floating again. Don't make me use my quirk so much. I have dry eye. He pulled them apart. We are wasting time. Next up, he released them. Bakugo fell to his knees, coughing. He looked up at Izuku. For the first time, there was genuine terror in his eyes. He had seen the swing. He knew, instinctively, that if Aizawa hadn't stopped it, he would be dead. Izuku rubbed his neck. He looked at his hand. He looked at Bakugo. I'm sorry, Kaken, Izuku whispered. My body, it reacts on its own. He walked back to the group. The other students parted like the Red Sea, giving him a wide berth. The results. The sun was setting by the time the tests concluded. The students gathered around the hologram projector. All right, the results, Aizawa said. The total is simply the aggregate of your physical scores. He pressed a button. 1. Momo Yayorozu, versatility. 2. Shoto Todoroki, raw power. 3. Katsuki Bakugo, athleticism. 4. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku stared at the number. 4th.